You get things done. You are a high achiever, working, serving, showing up. On the outside, you seem calm and capable and put together. But on the inside, you don't feel quite right, and it is difficult to shut your mind off. You might have high functioning anxiety. Stay tuned. We're going to explore that together. Let's just dive into this one. I bet you're the person that people can always depend on. You have achieved a lot. You are dependable. You show up. You care deeply. You're helpful. You're highly engaged. But maybe when you go home, you have a hard time relaxing, or you have difficulty sleeping, you have a lot going on in your mind, you think about a lot of things at one time. Maybe you feel like the internal engine is always kind of idling. Well, that sounds to me like it might be high functioning anxiety. What is that? Well, high functioning anxiety is marked by a masked anxiety and high external levels of achievement, or a subtle anxiety that fuels and augments high levels of achievement and performance. It's very common in people from either anxiety provoking childhood environments or people with developmental trauma. People who had to learn to overregulate that nervous system by keeping it always on so that they're always prepared for whatever the environment might need. And there are some pros to this. If you have high functioning anxiety, you probably are known as a hard worker. You've probably achieved a lot. You're probably organized and disciplined and very proactive. You're goal oriented. People know that you're helpful and dependable, that they ask you to do things because they know they can depend on you. You might actually be over called upon because nobody's ever known you to let the shoe drop. You are loyal to people, you are loyal to relationships, you're loyal to organizations, and you perform really well under pressure. But of course, there's a cost to this. When you have that overregulated nervous system, when probably in childhood, you learned that you had to always have that kind of arousal state. It's a sympathetic nervous system state that we're kind of turned up a little bit. We have a little bit of cortisol on board and a little bit of adrenaline because we're ready for whatever happens next. When you have developed that overregulated or over upregulated sympathetic nervous system response, you probably have become a perfectionist. You probably don't tolerate your own mistakes very well. There might be some negative self-talk involved. You probably overanalyze things. Maybe you perseverate on things. You kind of ruminate, like, I can't believe that happened. That was awful. And you get stuck on it. It might even keep you awake at night. And you might actually have difficulty sleeping. I'll come back to that one. You overwork, so you have difficulty relaxing. You might feel overwhelmed. You might feel overwhelmed all the time. And as soon as you cross something off your list, or two or three things off your list, you're still struggling with feelings of overwhelm. You might have difficulty saying no, not because you're a people pleaser, although people might accuse you of that, but because your sympathetic nervous system is constantly in go mode. So when somebody makes a request of you, because you've learned to be helpful, because you have this overactive sympathetic nervous system response that says yes, you also say yes. And so you might even overcommit, which contributes more to those feelings of overwhelm that are kind of fueled by the constant onboarding of cortisol. Well, there's a cost to this, right? So when you have that constant kind of upregulated sympathetic nervous system response, you constantly have cortisol flooding your body. Cortisol is great, remember, if you need to run away from a bear, but it's not good for you on an ongoing everyday kind of basis. And when we have those constant levels of cortisol, it's going to do a number of things to our bodies. We might get more headaches. We might gain weight, especially if we don't have a place for that cortisol to go. People who exercise and work out might be able to avoid that particular side effect of the cortisol, but they might need to work out because they need a place for that cortisol to go. So weight gain can be an issue. It increases your blood sugar. And so that puts you at more of a risk for endocrine dysfunction and diabetes. It increases your blood pressure, increasing your risk of heart disease, heart attack, stroke. It will also impact your sleep. Insomnia is huge for brain health and body health. You can actually lower your performance IQ by what we call an entire standard deviation. That's huge just by not getting enough sleep, particularly on a regular basis. So it might take you from having an average IQ to really being really low in your IQ performance, or the opposite. It might take you from being average, and then now you start getting enough sleep, and now you're functioning like you're really bright. So sleep is really huge. The other thing that that constant cortisol level does is it decreases what we call brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. I want you to think of that as the brain's fertilizer. It's a neuromodulator, and so it allows for the appropriate balanced production of all the neurotransmitters. And neurotransmitters are essential for neural communication. Our neurons do not talk to each other without neurotransmitters. And so it allows for the appropriate balanced production of those neurotransmitters. But it also, the reason we call it the reason we call it the brain's fertilizer is because it promotes neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity, remember, is the brain's ability to heal itself, to correct itself, to rewire itself, to recover and be resilient. So BDNF, this brain-derived neurotrophic factor, is essential then for neuroplasticity, which is essential to have a healthy brain. When we are in this upregulated sympathetic nervous system state, the other thing that happens, not only do we not rest well, but we do not digest well. Those require the opposite, which is a parasympathetic nervous system state. And so if we have all this cortisol on board, we're not digesting well, which means we're not getting enough of several of our neurotransmitters, including serotonin, which is largely produced in our gut. But it also puts us at risk for other digestive related problems. For example, might not be absorbing enough nutrients, or we might develop something like GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disorder. So that chronic cortisol on board does a lot of damage, including putting us at risk for other mental health disorders and an increased risk of dementia. So, it's important for us to learn how to self-soothe. For people with high functioning anxiety, generally because they learned to live at this high performance level, very often that nervous system learned I have to stay turned on and turned up to be able to protect myself, to be able to survive, and to be able to thrive. And so that individual never really learned how to self-soothe. So, how can you reset your nervous system and start to recover from high functioning anxiety so that you can keep all of the pros of being a high achiever and a high performer without having all of these cons? Well, the first thing is just to learn to become aware of your own nervous system. What does stress feel like in your body? Very often, for people with high functioning anxiety, because the anxiety is mild and because they have it managed, masked, pushed down, and they're performing well, most people with high functioning anxiety don't even know they have it. So The first thing is to become aware of your own nervous system. What does stress feel like in your body? I tense up my jaw. I tend to hold all of my stress in my face, in my head. But some people hold it in their chest and their chest gets tight, or their heart races. Some people hold it in their gut and they get butterflies or woozy, or they might even get indigestion. So think about what that feels like in your body. Do your limbs tense up? Do you feel lightheaded? What does it feel like for you? That's the first thing. Figure out what your internal alarm system sounds like that tells you that you are operating probably too far on the sympathetic nervous system side. The second thing, and I know I say this in almost every video, but practice the spiritual disciplines. Pray, meditate, and practice gratitude 20 to 30 minutes a day at least. Why? Well, because those spiritual disciplines increase blood flow to the brain in ways that quiet the fight and flight responses, that quiet that threat physiology that tells us we need to be ramped up, we need to be on alert, and it increases blood flow to that prefrontal cortex where empathy and altruism and thinking before you act and good decision making and planning, all that executive function stuff is right there in that prefrontal cortex. So practice the spiritual disciplines. They're also going to do a number of other things like increase theta waves and neurotransmitters that give you a sense of feeling calm and a sense of peace. The third thing you could do is engage in somatic practices, especially if you aren't already exercising. So, what I mean by that is yoga or Tai Chi. Those are the best. There's a lot of science that tells us that that calms our nervous system and helps reset it. Now, I know some believers aren't comfortable with things like yoga, and if that's true of you, then substitute a gratitude walk. This is 20 to 30 minutes of being outside. The more nature, the better, but outside, taking a long walk, nice, slow, deep breaths. Fill the chest with the air, let it out. And as you're walking, thank God for everything you can think of for that 20 to 30 minutes. It might be the breeze, it might be a leaf on the ground, it might be a favorite color that you see in the environment, it might be that you just live in a place where you have the freedom to walk. Whatever you can think of, thank Him for that 20 to 30 minutes on your walk. And then the fourth thing, the fourth suggestion I have for you to help reset that nervous system is really hard for people with high functioning anxiety. And that is this: learn to daydream. Why? Well, daydreaming allows us to go to a place in our brain called the default network mode. And in this default network, when we go into that mode, it allows most of the overactive parts of our brain to rest. And your brain needs to rest. Just like your body needs to rest, your brain needs to rest. If you have high functioning anxiety, you might have a hard time turning off your brain. But this is really, really important. And you'll find the science shows that it increases creativity and improves problem solving. But that's because you've allowed your brain for 20 or 30 minutes a day, even 10, to just go into daydreaming mode, to rest and to reset. I hope these tips have been helpful for you. I'd love to hear about your experiences. Go ahead and put them in the comments. And until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.